Welcome to Excel 2010 Statistics video number 6. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on the link below the video. Hey, we're going to start on the sheet Data Analysis. Now, data analysis. What is data analysis? Well, we talked about this in our first video. Data analysis is simply when you have a bunch of raw data, not organized in any way, and we're going to organize it or do calculations upon this data set so that we create useful information. For example, we're going to see how to sort this column so we see the top 5 sales, and then we can see which sales rep made those top 5 sales. Another example, we'll see how to do a pivot table and take the sales for each customer or sales rep and calculate the sum, the average, and the standard deviation. Again, data analysis is simply taking raw data and creating useful information to help you make some decision. Now, data analysis always requires, at least the features we're going to use in Excel, and in fact most programs will use, requires that field names or column headers or variable names are in the first row, and that records are in each row. Now, records is the database term in the statistics book where they call them observation, right? So the observation on this day, Tina sold to customer Fred Meyer. This was the amount. This was the cost of goods sold, and it was in the Midwest region. All right, so we're going to start with sorting. Then we're going to go to pivot tables. All right, sorting. We want to sort this column. Top 5. All right, number 1, you got to have your data set up like a proper data set. Number 2, select a single cell. Then go to the data, and there's A to Z and Z to A. Now, Z to A will give us the biggest on top, so I'm going to click. And just like that, wow. Now I'm going to Control Z. One worry that people have when they sort is that, well, if I'm sorting this column, isn't it going to mix everything up? Well, let's prove to ourselves that that doesn't happen. I'm going to highlight that one record or one row or one observation and give it a yellow color, right? Now let's do that again. I'm going to click in a single cell, and it doesn't matter which cell. Whatever you do, you don't want to do this and hit the sorting button, because then it will wreck the data set. All right? I'm going to come up to Data, Z to A, and just like that, wow, that is amazing. All right, so now we can clearly see Sue, Chin, Tina. Wow, so Chin had 3 of the top 5 sales. Now, what about, that was sorting a single column. Sometimes you want to see all of a particular sales rep together. So we want to see Chin, 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 Chin. And then within that, we want to see their Chin's sales sorted. Before we do that 2-field sort, let's sort this one. I want to see the smallest cost of goods at the top. So click in any one cell, and I'm going to click A to Z. Now, let's talk about sorting on 2 columns. The rule is, if the final sort column, which means I want all the Chins together, and then within that particular sales rep, I want their sales sorted, the sales rep column is called the major sort, because we want all of the Chins together, and then within that have this sorted. Major sort, that means you do it last. I'm going to click over in this column, and I'm going to sort this one first. Z to A, boop. And then I come over here. See, now this is perfectly sorted on this column. So that means when we sort this by Chin, this whole column is already sorted, so it will remain that way. When all the Chins come together, they're already perfectly ordered. So now, single cell in the second column, the major sort. And I'm going to say, this one I'm going to do A to Z because I want the alphabetized. Bloop. Look at that. All the Chins perfectly sorted. So if I come down, wow, this is huge. OK, so now here's the new, there's Joy. So Joy's sales, all the Joys are together, and then all of her sales are sorted perfectly. All right, sorting. Not much to sort. Remember, single cell. If you want to do it 2 columns, you do it 1 and then 2. Now, let's go over to our next sheet, Data Analysis 2. Pivot tables. Now, pivot tables are the most amazing data analysis feature in Excel. And in the working world, if you go talk to people, whether employees or recruiters, they always say, oh, pivot tables are so hard. But I am here to show you they are not hard at all. And here's the trick. You visualize your report before you actually go and create the pivot table. Now check this out. Your boss comes in or a homework problem says, hey, I want to see all the customer sales for each sales rep. Right off the bat, you say, oh, that means there's two criteria. I have this huge data set here, right? Sales for customer for each sales rep. That literally means if I was to do this by hand, right? Joy, Fred Meyer. That's an example of a customer and a sales rep. So I want to see the total for Fred Meyer, the customer, that Joy sold, the sales rep. You'd literally have to come through over here and say, OK, there's a Joy here in this field and a Fred Meyer here. Joy, Fred Meyer. No, 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 no. Yes, no. I mean, yes, no. Yes, no. Man, that would just take forever. But the point is, yes, it would take forever. Pivot tables are going to make it easier. But if you visualize it set up like a little table, sales rep are here, customer here, and the intersecting cell is the total sales given Fred Meyer and Joy. That means that cell right there, we're adding from this huge column here, right, this entire column. We're adding that number up given two criteria, Fred Meyer and Joy. Now, here's the trick to visualizing in Pivot Table. Co-op, Fred Meyer, PCC, Safeway. These are sitting at the top of each column. So everything in this column is Fred Meyer. So we call this either a column header or a column label. That's what the Pivot Table calls them. Over here, Joy. Each one of these for Joy, right? The entire row has Joy sales, total sales for each customer. This is called a row header or a row label. So if you draw a little picture like this, intersecting value, when we get to creating the pivot table, it's going to be easy. Because this is just a field, customer. This is just a field, sales rep. Row headers, column headers, boom. If you have that picture in your mind, then pivot tables are easy. Now, just like sorting, you click in a single cell. Doesn't matter which one, because we're going to do the whole pivot table. The whole table is going to be, in essence, put into this pivot table. Let's see how to do it. We're going to go up to Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table. It's guessing. And the reason the dancing ants are going around the correct range is because we have our data set up correctly. Blanks all the way around. It's asking where we want to put it, on this sheet or a new worksheet. We'll take new worksheet. Click OK. Now, on your computer, your field list may be over here, but you can click and drag it wherever you want. Now, look at this. Oh, that's just the list of the fields. And whoa, column labels. So if I drag this and bring it down here, it'll show me the particular field in the columns. Over here, if I take the sales rep and drag it down here, oh, row labels. So picturing this in advance, very helpful. Not only that, but look over here. They actually give you a little picture. It looks like the picture we already envisioned, right? Row labels or row headers, column headers or column labels. So let's do it. Let's take our sales rep. And over here, it says check. I'm not going to check these. I'm going to click and drag, because sometimes if you check, 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 they go into the wrong place. So this is a more consistent method. I'm going to drag that down to the row labels. Now watch this. See, it says no, 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 no. Oh, I could drop it there, 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 there. But I'm choosing to drop it in row labels. That is amazing. Instantly, it went through those thousands of records on this table over here, right? And it just took one. It looked through this entire column and took exactly one of each sales rep name. Now we're going to take customer and drag it to column labels. And then finally, we know that we want to add sales, right? And that says values. So I'm going to take sales and drag it down to values. That is just amazing. Think about what we did. All we did was have a data set. We opened the pivot table, field list, dragged it where we want, instantaneous. Now, another point about this, Joy, Fred Meyer, to do that calculation without a pivot table, which means you have to create a formula, right? Very time consuming and difficult in comparison to how easy it was to create this pivot table. All right, so hopefully that looks pretty easy. We're going to create a few more, but we have to do a few formatting things here. And by the way, over here, I have a bunch of notes. Now, before we do any formatting, I want to name this sheet. So I'm going to double click it and call it PT1. First things first, notice there's some context-sensitive ribbons. If I click outside the pivot table, they go away. If I click inside the pivot table, they're there. I'm going to click on Design. We're going to do this for every single pivot table we ever do. I want you to go to Report. So Pivot Table Tools, Design, Layout Group, Report, and Show in Tabular. Now, let me just show you something. That says column labels, row labels. That's not very good information. I want sales rep and customer. So that's what this does. Design, layout, show in tabular. And we're going to do that every time we do a pivot table. Why they don't allow you to set that as a default, I do not know. Much better. Now, you could get fancy with your formatting. I usually like to keep them pretty simple. I'm going to choose, oh, look at that's just terrible. Why did they even put that one in there? I'm going to select this one right here. Just a nice, simple, no nonsense. Now, sometimes you want to see the grand total, sometimes you don't. In this case, I'm going to show you how to turn them off. Oh, grand totals off for rows and columns. Later, as we go through the textbook, we'll do a lot of different types of pivot tables. And there's some situations where we have them on, some situations where we have them off. All right, now the next thing is these numbers don't have any format. I'm going to click somewhere inside of the numbers, the value area, and right-click. And all the tricks we need to know, formatting, number formatting that is, functions and formulas are under value field settings. So that's what you got to remember, value field settings. Remember, it's a value error. Oh, and it's a field, and these are the settings. This dialog box allows you to change the name, allows you to change the function. Later on in the book, we'll see how to use this one to create formulas. And there it is, number formatting. So I'm going to click number formatting. And I'm going to click currency and click OK. One important note, you don't want to format a pivot table using the home ribbon number group, because pivot tables can change, and we'll see how to pivot them later, meaning you can drag and drop these anywhere you want and add more as you go along. If you do the number formatting from this dialog box right there, it will always retain that number formatting. All right, I'm going to click OK. Now, maybe that's not colorful enough, so we come back up to Design, and we add something like that right there. All right, so that is a simple pivot table. We have our Fred Meyer adding with 2 criteria. Now, let's go back and see how to create our second pivot table, Data Analysis 2. Here's the second pivot table. And this one is kind of summarizing data on 2 criteria. By the way, this is also called a cross-tabulated table. And in Chapter 2, that's one of the terms they'll use, cross-tabulated. And all it means is it's tabulated like a cross. Row header, column header, intersection. That's what cross-tabulation means. Now, this one is a straight calculation based on a single criteria. So we have customer. So we're going to drop our customer field into the row labels. And we're actually going to drag the sales column, the field, into the pivot table 1, 2, 3. And then you right-click, and you can change the calculation. We'll keep the first one as sum. We'll change the next one to average. And we'll change the third one to standard deviation. Now, important to note here, each one of these, the sales number, average, standard deviation, If we're talking about Safeway, if we had to do this by hand, we'd literally have to go through this entire customer column and go Safeway, no, Safeway, no, Safeway, yes, and take that and write it on a piece of paper. Safeway, take that, write it on a piece of paper. No, no, Safeway, take that and write it on a piece of paper. Once we had all those numbers, we'd then have to add them, calculate the average, and calculate the standard deviation. With a pivot table, it's a few clicks, and it's all done. Absolutely amazing. So let's see how to do this. Click in one cell, Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table, Data Set, New Sheet. Click OK. Now we want Customer. So I'm dragging it down to the Customer, and I'm dragging it down to the row labels. Sales, we're going to have to drag it 1, 2, 3. You can drag it. You can actually close this, and I should show you what happens if you close it. Right? If you want it to come back, then you either click this field list over here, which I don't think I've ever done in my entire life. I just right click, show field list. I'm going to drag this out of the way. Now, let's do immediately the first thing each time. Design, report layout, show in tabular. If you wanted to do some more formatting, you could. Come here. This one is going to be sum. I'm going to right click, value field settings. Come down to number, and like currency. Click OK, click OK. Now I'm going to come here, right click, value field settings. Change the calculation to average, number formatting, currency. Click OK, click OK. Right click, value field settings. This is going to be standard deviation of a population. This is a population just means we have all the data instead of taking just a few of them to estimate. We'll talk about that more in chapter 5 or 6 or something. Number formatting, currency. Click OK, click OK. Absolutely amazing. And if you wanted to change some formatting, there's really not very many good formattings here. Yuck. Maybe that one right there. Oh, no, I'm going to Control Z. That's undo. I think I'll leave that one there. All right, so there we have it. Customer, sum, average, sales. Absolutely. Now, one last thing. I don't think I like that 3 there. When we right-click, value field settings, you can change the name, change the function, change the number formatting. I should have done that while I was had this open. Click OK. Still further, you can actually just double click it and open. You could also, if you can put it into edit mode, F2. F2 puts the cell in edit mode. You can actually change it right in the cell. All right, so that's pivot table number 2. Now we're going to go over to, and I'm going to call this sheet double click. PT2. Enter. I'm going to come over to data analysis 3. Now, here's our final pivot table. And again, this we'll formally do it in the textbook in chapter 2. Phones. Oh, yeah, we have a whole list. Here's students. Here's phones, the phones they use. All we want to do is a list that counts how many in this data set, how many people had iPhones, how many people had Motorola, etc. The only trick is here, this phone type field, we're going to drag it to the row label, and we're going to drag it to the values area. Now, there's some notes up here. When you, over here, we dragged our sales number to values. Because it was a number, it defaulted to sum. When I come over here, when we drag a field with text to the values area, it will default to count. Now, that doesn't really matter because we already saw how easy it is to change the function. All right, you ready? I'm going to click in one cell, Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table. All good. I'm going to click OK on a new sheet. I'm going to immediately double click the sheet, call it PT3. I'm going to watch this. This is so cool. Phone type to the row. Instantly, a unique list from that huge data set, right? Phone values. And you're basically done. Now, one last thing. We're going to go to Design, Row Layout, Report Layout, Show in Tabular. Now, I actually want to show you one last trick here. We're going to go back over to Data Analysis 2. I'm going to recreate this pivot table, and I actually want to show you how to pivot and also a right-clicking trick. All right, I'm going to do this in fast speed here. Actually, we talked about, let's go to Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table. I'm going to click OK because I want it on a new sheet. I'm going to immediately drag Sales Rep to Row, Customer to Columns, Sales to Values. Boom, that's done. Look at that. What, a couple 10 seconds or something? Now, I want to format this. And I want to show you a right-clicking trick. And then I want to show you how to pivot the pivot table. When you right-click, we learned that value field settings. This is awesome. If I click on this, it has change the name, change the function. Later, we'll see this one, which is formulas and number formatting. So this is a one-stop shopping to do something to this field, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 things. However, I'm going to cancel this. If you just want to format it, you could right-click Number Formatting and do it that way. You could also right-click and summarize values by. There's our function list, or at least the ones most commonly used. That will get you to the dialog box. Also, show values as. We'll learn this later in the class. So you do have an alternative. You could number format. Don't select this one. We want this one because this will stay with the pivot table if it pivots. This one or this one. But again, one-stop shopping, that's pretty nice. All right, now let's pivot it. Super easy. Actually, Design, Layout, Tabular. Your boss comes in and says, hey, I didn't want sales rep as row headers and customer as column headers. I wanted the reverse, right? Totally simple. You simply come over to our field list, and these are the different areas. You click and drag. Now, look at this. This is pretty cool. Pivot. What if your boss wanted this, or you liked the way this looked, right? Customer and then sales rep. But to finish this off, we're going to take this and drag it over to the column headers, and boom. So pivoting, totally simple. Right-clicking, and alternative. All right, so in this video, we did data analysis on properly set up data sets. We did sorting. We saw how awesome pivot tables are, making our life as data analysis and statisticians super easy. All right, see you next video. For charts, charts is what we're going to do next video. See you next video.